Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. There is a ton that is happening right now. We have a total lunar eclipse, a blood moon coming up in about 24 hours as I record this video, a very powerful energetic event. We have a ton of planetary alignments and geometries and energies that are active at this moment in time. We're at the end of solar maximum, the beginning of the descending phase, meaning we've been loaded up with energy from the sun for a few years now. And as of this moment right now, there are 3 zones that are showing anomalous earthquake activity, and 2 of them are looking quite striking. First and foremost, there is an earthquake swarm that's occurring in the Ryukyu Islands near Taiwan in Japan. This could lead to something bigger. We just had the biggest earthquake yet in this sequence, a magnitude 5.6. We've been having some big earthquake activity south of Fiji, 3 magnitude 6.0 plus earthquakes in the past month or so, and the last one being the strongest. These are all deep earthquakes that happens in that location, but it could be a sign that there's something even bigger to happen there, maybe magnitude 7. It can even get up to magnitude 8. We have magnitude 8 plus deep earthquakes that have popped off in that location before, even just recently, 2018. And also we have an earthquake swarm right now in the United States in Nevada near Warm Springs. And this does seem to be related to hydrothermal activity. There's a reason why the place is called Warm Springs, but there have been a lot of earthquakes here. So these are the 3 main areas to watch. We're going to discuss all of them. An honorable shout out as well is the ongoing earthquake swarm, Canary Islands, Tenerife. This is a volcanic system. There's been more than 5,000, probably actually more than 8,000 earthquakes now at this point in this location, the strongest being a magnitude 4 plus earthquake, which is big for a volcanic system. So there's a lot that's happening. But let's start with Japan, because this is the area that is in some aspects the most concerning for the immediate future, though Fiji and these deep earthquakes is also concerning on some levels. So here we have our map, and if I set this to largest magnitude, we see this 5.6 here. This is the strongest earthquake that has occurred in this swarm yet, defined by multiple magnitude 5s. There's another magnitude 5 there. This is just for the past day. You'll notice that we did have a magnitude 6 here just off to the east in the volcanic islands region. So showing that there's activity on both sides of the Philippines Sea plate and both in these volcanic subduction zones, which is interesting. And if you zoom out, we've been having all this deep activity here south of Fiji, fairly close by. So there's clearly some plate shifting and movement that's occurring. This is all connected together. And remember, we have this total lunar eclipse, this blood moon coming up in 24 hours. That will be viewable from these locations. But if we go back here, we see just for the past 24 hours, let me click it on now for the past week. And we'll see just how many earthquakes have popped off. There's that 6.3 in Fiji. We'll talk about that soon. That is very, very deep, as you can see, about 600 kilometers. But if I set this to focus, we see this 5.6 is top of the chart now. We see a 5.4, 5.2, 5.1, 5.1, 5.0, 5.0. That is your sign that this is anomalous activity. Now, for this location, to be fair, for the Ryukyu Trench and just in general around Japan, they do get earthquake swarms fairly frequently. So we have seen earthquake swarms in these locations that start up and then they basically will die out. That's not uncommon. There's been more than 1,200 earthquakes there in total, including micro earthquakes. But often we do see that we get these sort of swarms, and then that is a foreshock sequence to something larger. And some evidence of that is the fact that this is topping out at a 5.6 for the highest magnitude event thus far. Often these earthquake swarms stay in the magnitude 4 range, or they just barely touch into magnitude 5. 5.6 is pretty big. And the fact that there have been so many in this sequence in the magnitude 5 range tells you that this is not a single high magnitude event and then the aftershock swarm. In fact, this is the most recent earthquake there, showing it's building up. And if there was, for example, a magnitude 7 earthquake to strike this location, this 5.6 is just a drop in the bucket in terms of seismic energy release. Doesn't mean you can't see that drop and use it as a kind of a warning signal if you're paying attention, but effectively it's not releasing any stress on the fault if there is to be a higher magnitude event to occur. Even if it was to be a magnitude 6.6 earthquake here, this would be just about 1/32th the energy of that larger main shock event. And this would probably be indicative of something bigger than magnitude 6.5, even more likely up to magnitude 7 if this is a foreshock sequence. Now I have the cumulative magnitude here. I calculated this out. This includes this magnitude 5.6 earthquake. We see that this started back up on the 26th of February this year. And let me break this down. We're looking at cumulative seismic energy release in gigawatt hours, because you can measure the actual amount of energy released by an earthquake. And then we see here our cumulative magnitude for all these earthquakes combined together. You take that seismic energy release for every single earthquake, 4.6, the 5.2, whatever. You add that together. This is our cumulative seismic energy release. Well, that corresponds to a cumulative magnitude. So it started off with magnitude 4 earthquakes. We see this down here, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, and it'll quickly go up as it moves through this cumulative seismic energy release. You see that this is a logarithmic. So this is a 10x jump going from 1 to 10. So that's 1 right there, that's 2, 3, right? So on and so forth. So every single one of these jumps, if it's big, it's showing that it's really adding on. Because for example, here, this is going from, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of a sudden up to 7 right there in terms of gigawatt hours. That's a pretty big jump. Well, here's our 5.6 earthquake, all of a sudden taking us from a equivalent magnitude of about 5.8 to above 5.9. So tremendous amount of energy in that. And we were down here at about 8.5 gigawatt hours going up to about 15. So that single most recent highest magnitude event for Japan basically just immediately doubling the amount of energy that's been released overall for that swarm. This is only for magnitude 4 and greater earthquakes. There have been more than 1,200 earthquakes as part of this, including microtremor events and everything of that nature. But if we're really concerned about cumulative seismic energy, because of how that scales, you really only need to track magnitude 4 and greater. So here we can see this visualization going back to 28th, mind you, okay? So let me show you this. And we see 1,277 events right here. This does not include the magnitude 5.6, but this is quite a lot of earthquakes. So you can just kind of see that sort of activity off the islands here. And we see that basically it's continuing to go on now, that 5.6 being the strongest. This has not stopped. This has not ended. I would love for this graphic to be updated to the most recent data going to today, the 2nd, but I was unable to find that. But we do have this great visualization here showing all the magnitude 5 earthquakes that occurred in that time frame, a lot of magnitude 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s, etc. So this is very, very active, and we can learn a little bit more about this if we look at our geologic setting here. So this isn't exactly the location. We need to go a little bit further south, but here we see a cross-section view. Here's the Philippine Sea Plate subducting underneath the Eurasian Plate. So let me show you really quickly, for example, where we are. So this is the Philippine Sea Plate. You see the subduction zones, and here is the Eurasian Plate. And this really specifically is cutting through about here. This cross-section is like a vertical cut right through about there. But this Ryukyu Trench is pretty similar across the board, so it suffices just for this visual to give you. Here we see earthquakes and the clustering of them. So we see a lot of earthquakes, and that follows down this subduction zone. That's how we know that these subduction zones exist, is because the earthquakes effectively highlight them. We see that in this volcanic arc, the Ryukyu Trench, we get these sort of seismic shallow swarms. That's what's happening right now. Again, not guaranteed to lead to a higher magnitude event, but often these higher magnitude events do follow these sort of seismic swarms, so the risk factor is elevated. If we're interested in forecasting to help everybody out who may live there, also tsunami risk, then you want to really look at all these events very clearly and attribute the right level of risk to them. So the risk is elevated for there to be a larger event in that location. If there was to be a high magnitude earthquake that was shallow, it could generate a tsunami that would hit Japan, hit Taiwan, hit those islands, hit the Korean Peninsula, hit East China. It could even go down into Southeast Asia and hit locations in there as well. So this is serious business, especially if it's to occur, though we hope that does not happen. And we know that the strongest earthquake that we've had in this location in the past was a magnitude 7.7 right about here, 1938 on June 10th. So we can get big earthquakes here. 7.7 is big enough to generate a tsunami if it is shallow. So this very well could unfold. I don't think it's the most likely outcome. The most likely outcome is that this is just an isolated swarm that eventually will die out, but the fact that now it has popped off at the 5.6 raises that risk of there being a higher magnitude event to follow in the middle sixes and even up to magnitude 7 or greater. And this time frame, I would say, is really most active for the next 2 weeks, but you could really extend this all the way out to March to be safe, because some geologic process can be a little slow at times. Okay, so this is a high risk zone right now, and this magnitude 6 there, Volcano Islands popping off today 20 kilometers down, is only further adding fuel into that fire, you could say, showing that there's movement across this entire Philippine sea plate. Do not forget that the most recent strong earthquake that we have had is this magnitude 7.1 right down here. We can look at that if we go to our 30-day significant worldwide. There it is. Deep earthquake, 620 kilometers down. That's near the lower depth limit that you can get for earthquakes. I believe that's the deepest high magnitude event that this location's ever had. So this energy from these deep focused earthquakes radiates out a little bit of a wider distance than it would be if it was shallow. So that means that energy got loaded up into here all across basically this entire part of Southeast Asia. So remember, that occurred just on the 22nd of February. Now, if you go to our 30-day view here, let's go to the next location, and then we'll talk about Nevada, United States. Here we see a lot of earthquakes near Fiji. This is part of the Kermadec Trench. We have Tonga, the largest volcanic eruption of the 21st century occurred here in January of 2022. Don't forget that. Big eruption. That's the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai eruption, January of 2022. We see this 5.3 there on the 1st of March. So just recently, just yesterday, this 6.3 popped off. That's a big earthquake. And then we see here this 6.2 on the 10th of February. And then on the 22nd, we see a 6.0. So we had a deep focus 6.2 earthquake right here at 532 kilometers of depth on the 10th of February. And then about 12 days later, we had a magnitude 6 to follow. Okay, that in and of itself is unusual because now you have two and they're close together in magnitude. But we sometimes get these sort of double sequences and that's it. Now we've had a third and it's stronger than the others. In fact, this 6.3 about equivalent in energy to 6.2 and 6.0 combined. And it's not weaker, it's stronger, showing that there's this intensification that's occurring just like we're seeing right now with the earthquake swarm off the Miyako Islands region of Japan. And so this is also looking like there could be something that will soon occur here that's larger, because these all could be foreshocks. And again, a magnitude 6 compared to a magnitude 7 in terms of total energy release is 1/32th as much. So that's a lot less, way less. So as a result, if there is, let's say, going to be a magnitude 7 or something even larger pop off in this location, these are just drops in the bucket, but effective warning signs for that to come. We can look at that data here. We see some of the past earthquakes in this region. This is going back to the year 1900, magnitude 6 and greater earthquakes. I drew a box over it. You can see that it's super active, okay? But if we go to our newest earthquakes here, we see this 6.3, allowing us to zoom in on this location, and we'll really zoom in even further. And we see quite a lot of activity. Now if we go to largest magnitude here, we see this 7.7 that popped off back in 2002 just nearby at a similar depth value of 580. So you're not likely to get a tsunami from a deep focus earthquake. Basically, it's not going to happen, but this is showing that there is a massive release of energy occurring at depth, and this is related to the plate tectonic activities that are occurring there, and that as a result, strong plate movements affect other parts of the globe because all the plates are interconnected together, right? The entire Earth is interconnected in one energy system. You can't change one part of it without adjusting the other. So this shows that there are big earthquakes that occur right in the zone where we are getting this activity like this 6.3 here, the 6.0, and the 6.2. The largest earthquake for this zone that I highlighted was back in 2018, magnitude 8.2 to the north, fairly close by in the grand scheme, but to the north, also deep focus 600 kilometers down. That earthquake was an excellent opportunity for scientists, geoscientists, geophysicists, and more, because we had high resolution seismic coverage for the event, allowing us to learn a lot more about these sort of deep, high magnitude earthquakes. So you can even get up to megaquakes, magnitude 8 or greater at those depths, representing a tremendous amount of energy release, and we don't exactly know how it occurs. There's a few different ideas out there, and they all have holes in them, you could say. It could be due to mineral phase transitions going from a low density to a high density, and that releases this energy. Could be due to porosity and water and carbon and some of the mineral changes that undergo there, and thermal runaway where you get this heat to get released, and because of how it flows through materials, it just creates this kind of like exothermic runaway reaction. There's a lot of different ideas. It's probably all the things combined to some degree, but this most recent 6.3 earthquake in Fiji, making it look like we really could have a big earthquake there. And I would say it's actually more likely for us to get a really big earthquake right in this zone in the next month or so. I'm talking magnitude 7 or greater as compared to the Japanese earthquake swarm, because we do get swarms in those locations around Japan that sometimes never have a high magnitude event in terms of, let's say, something in magnitude greater than what all the other earthquakes are made up of, which would be in this case magnitude 5s. So that very well could occur. Again, I think that's probably the most likely outcome, but I don't think the outcome of there being a higher magnitude event for Japan is insignificant or negligible. I think that's still a much higher risk factor than normal as a result of this swarm here. Now, one area that's also swarming on the globe is in the United States, specifically Nevada. And we can go here to our earthquakes for the United States, 30 days, all magnitudes. We see a lot of activity, of course, along the San Andreas Fault, the West Coast, and we see all our recent earthquakes here colored in orange and in yellow. And we see that the strongest here having been a magnitude 4.3, so that's not tiny. It's fairly large. It's one of the larger earthquakes for the United States. And actually, there's been an uptick of seismic activity across the entire United States for the past month or so. I mean, we've been having earthquakes in South Carolina. We just had an earthquake in Kansas, Nebraska, magnitude 4.1. Like, there's been some interesting earthquake activity kind of spread out all around. Here we see this magnitude 4 in Canada. That was back on the 1st of February, so nearly a month ago now. But in general, we see that there's been some unusual magnitude 4+ activity across the United States. But here we're seeing the most active seismic energy release in the United States at this moment in time because of this 4.3, the 3.9, 3.5. This is showing 23 earthquakes here. But I think there's actually been more. The thing is, this is part of a known hydrothermal system. I mean, it's called warm springs for a reason. People go there for the springs and more. And if we look at our data here, this is going back to the year 1900. And I selected a box around quite a bit of the United States here, showing the biggest earthquakes, I think it's magnitude 6 and greater. If we go to smallest magnitude, yeah, magnitude 6 and greater, we don't see any activity around Warm Springs magnitude 6 or greater during this time frame. We do see a whole bunch of nuclear tests that occurred, right? This is back in the 70s and maybe the 60s as well. In general, they did a bunch of nuclear explosions in the 70s in Nevada. So, you know, you wonder how that affects us over the long term. But the largest earthquake for this entire time frame being in California, the 7.1 Ridgecrest in 2019 down here. So Warm Springs does not look like it's going to be the location of a higher magnitude event like magnitude 6 or greater, and therefore I wouldn't be concerned about that, but it is an area with a ton of active swarming right now at this moment in time. So those are 3 locations that are experiencing active earthquake swarming at this moment in time. The 3 magnitude 6 plus earthquakes south of Fiji, the active earthquake swarm near Miyako Island, Japan, and also in Nevada. And all 3 of those locations are being impacted by this total lunar eclipse. They will be able to see that blood moon, and that is one thing that's connecting together. So it's not isolated to one part of the globe. It's fairly distributed across the globe if you look at those 3 locations, but they do have this all connecting them together. You could say this coming up in about 24 hours. I will be having a live stream of this event, imagery provided by the Griffith Observatory out of Los Angeles. So thanks to them, that will be live streamed on my page when it happens. So check out the live streams. Make sure you set notifications for that. It'll be, of course, at night. If you have the ability to go see this yourself, make sure you go outside, see the blood moon. It really is incredible if you haven't seen it before, but we will also be live streaming it. Hopefully the weather will be good and not cloudy, and that right now is the forecast for Los Angeles. So keep in mind that there's also a ton of volcanic activity right now across the Ring of Fire, specifically the Eastern Pacific Ring of Fire. So that's important to note too. And this is, of course, you know, the entire Pacific plate effectively is being impacted by this blood moon. And as of right now, it does not look like Kilauea will erupt with the blood moon, though it's still possible. She's showing anomalous activity with some of the tilt deformation angles. So Pele could basically wake up and decide to give us a show, but it's more likely that will occur after the blood moon eclipse, probably a few days after that occurs. So I'll keep you up to date on all that. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. Please smash that thumbs up button to help the channel grow. Subscribe to stay up to date on everything that is happening with the Earth energetically. Of course, earthquakes, severe weather, geomagnetic storms, volcanic activity, space weather, solar activity like solar flares, planetary alignments, planetary resonances, interstellar cosmic forces, consciousness. I bring all that together, present videos almost daily. Hope to see you around. Thank you all so much and have a great day.